I've got just a few minutes up front, and I just wanted to set the scene. And before I set the scene, I was thinking, what's the stuff that might be of most interest and value? So having come out of the Australian system, which has gone through obviously very significant, very recent change, but actually the change started with financial services reform in around 2002, 3 and 4. And what I was trying to do is to reflect on some of the lessons, not at a technical level, but more at a strategic level, about the way some businesses responded and the way businesses responded, some with a successful outcome, some with a less successful outcome. I encourage you to go and have a look at Simon Sinek. So Simon's a guy that talks in TED Talks. He's got a business. He's turning up into Auckland on a speaking tour. When I first listened to his discussion online a few years ago now, he kind of pioneered this notion of why. You got to answer, we all got to answer, why do we do what we do? So if you're running a financial planning business or a financial advice business, why is it that you do what you do? Now, of course, there's a lot of reasons to unpack, but if you get to that like fundamental purpose about why you're in the game that you're in, that becomes very, very powerful. And he will go on to explain, I won't. He'll go on to explain if you manage your why, then everything else becomes clearer, and that becomes your competitive advantage. Because if we're sitting in a room of 80, 100, 120 financial advisors, and a well-heeled client walked in the door today and had an interview with everyone in this room, well, everyone's capable, competent, skilled and knowledgeable and expert and so on, why are they going to deal with your practice? So why is it that your clients deal with you? And unpacking this why piece is kind of pretty fundamental, because that sits at the centre of your strategic decisions. The reg world we've been in is massive. It's changed, right? Just look at the last 3 years as an example. We've had the whole FAA review, which started in 2015, and that was focused and ordered and well structured and had check-in points and so on. But if it feels like to you, then the last 12, 18 months, someone's just hit the fast button and the sprint button on the pace of change in the reg change world, and the thematic reports and the conduct and culture and the Royal Commission and coffee and ICLR and all the other acronyms, you would be right in thinking it's just got a whole lot faster, and has. So the context about which we make decisions around where we sit at a business level has also changed. And so as pace of change goes on, going, actually, no, I've got my time, I can take my time to think about it. Actually, you can, but there's a lot of other stuff that's come in the mix. And so that context change becomes a really important strategic piece to toss in at the front end. If we just follow the bouncing ball, if I think about the FSC, and I use that as the example, what's the why of the FSC? What's the undeniable part of why we do what we do? Well, we're here ultimately to help New Zealanders have a better life experience through the products and services that come through the sector. And within the FSC, we passionately believe that, right? We passionately believe we're here for public good. That flows into our advocacy, it flows into our research, it flows into our events, it flows into the way we run our committees. That stuff you can't take away because it lives in people's DNA. So when you're talking to me or to Rob or to people on the board and you go, so why does the FSC exist? Our why is really clear. We actually want a much better outcome for the New Zealand community through their financial services experience, because it's life-changing. So if you get it right, it's life-changing, and if you get it wrong, it's also life-changing. So whatever your why is, whatever it is that you live to serve your customers, to serve your communities, whatever that is, and to those who were in the room when Matt Church spoke at the Financial Advice New Zealand conference yesterday, he got into a really nice piece around niches. Like, what's your target market? So once you start in your why, it might actually be your why is to help, and then you go into your particular part of the discussion. It could be the small businesses of the North Shore. It could be the families of Hamilton. It could be the farmers of Invercargill. You kind of get really clear on that why. The next thing is the proposition piece, right? So we all have the proposition. Again, I'll use the FSC analogy. So we're in the business of doing what I said we were doing. Our proposition is that we spend a lot of time on policy and advocacy. We spend a lot of time on research and insight and leadership. We spend a lot of time on events and bringing the community together. We spend a lot of time on bringing the disparate parts of the sector into a single place. And so the proposition to members, many of whom are sitting in this room and some of whom see the stuff that the FSC does, sees that play out. You may not go, oh, this looks like a strategic initiative of the Policy and Governance Committee of the FSC. You just see what you see. You might not know that the Navigating Regulation roadshows are a product of a strategic decision made by the FSC board to roll out and engage with advisors. You just see the experience. And in many ways, that's what your clients will see. So the proposition becomes really important. And if you're in the business of figuring out the why, then your proposition kind of has to match that. Because if you're saying, I want to deal with these kind of clients, and again, FSC analogy, the FSC wants to represent all in the sector who are in the world of producing, manufacturing, or serving the financial services community. That's our target market. Well, we've got to know what that target market actually wants before we build our proposition. So that's just the play out in terms of where we head. And then the final piece is, how do we structure ourselves? So if we just play that through the analogy of running a financial planning business, the licensing conversation is driving people to 4, not 1. Starting at this side of the column rather than the other end of the column. And I would put it to you that anyone who's running a business needs to start at the right end to figure out why they're here, what's their proposition, who's their ideal client, and then spilling out of that will become, so what's the right structure to be? Do we want to be a FAP? Do we want to buddy together and almost be a co-op? How do we want to run and structure ourselves? Do we want to join a dealer group? Do we need the support because we actually just want to focus on our clients and outsource the rest? So again, out of the Australian experience, I saw this stuff take place. And it was, if people weren't considered about it, then, what kind of happens is you work with your circle of influence and you kind of get advice from the people that you know and trust. And hey, that's a good thing. But the kind of business that you want to build, noting that the business that you're building is, for many people, a significant asset, which at some point in time might be something that you want to sell or hand to your kids or buddy in with someone. These are big decisions to figure out how you want to run it. And so that's why this licensing conversation is big. Having the conversation often with John and Derek and the broader FMA team has been around at which end are people starting their thinking? Because it's a really complex area, even just the decision around the structure that you want. And so hopefully the message out of this is just to, as we're now heading into the final straight, a number of you may have already made your calls, happy days. A number of you may be considering, whatever. The main thing is to go, just do a sense check. Have you made the decisions in the right order, in the right way, and are you comfortable with where you're going to land?